when I'm on my own. I'm paranoid and restless at home when I'm all alone. I lock the door, and I've been so fucked up. Yeah, I've been busting out at the seams. You know it's never enough when you see it in your dreams. I've been known, yeah, I've been known to go, and I've been known to throw. And I played along before, but it's wrong, and I won't play no more. Cause I've been alone before, but I've been around the sun. And now that it's said and done, you'll be the lonely one. Cause I've been the lonely one for so long, and I wanna know you are. Cause I thought of everything, thing. I thought of everything.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Level Up Cleveland. And this week we have with us Mr. Craig Martini.
Hello, hello, hello.
Anybody that doesn't know who Craig is, Craig's played with a numerous amount of musicians. Joe Satriani, Paul Gilbert. Those are the two noticeable ones. But what you're most famous for, and this in my opinion, is Unified Culture. That's your band, man. I mean, that is your band you're in. Right now you're doing the Looper thing, because you have your solo projects out there also that you're doing the Looper thing with. Very cool stuff there too. We'll get into all that. But thanks for coming down.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're another one of them guys that comes from that whole Parma thing of just tons of people that come from, and you actually played with a lot of those guys through the years too, growing up.
Sure.
In your younger years, you played with. You started off with Terror,
right?
And
believe it or not, I actually never lived. I lived in Parma later on in life, but I was like from Chardon.
Oh,
I lived
you just
way
out
on the east side, and that's how come I knew the Zooter guys, because we went to school together, we grew up together, we knew each other. They lived like right down the street from me, and so ever since I was 11 years old, I've known them.
Oh,
and so the way that I got into that situation with the band Terror was, I was playing down at Silky Sullivan's in the Flat with my band called DDT. We were like this cover band of metal, and we were like playing all this like Anthrax and Metallica and all kinds of cool stuff that we liked at the time. And Brian and John
Sakula,
yep, they were sound guys too, and so they happened to run sound for the band that I was playing in that night, and they needed a bass player, and they were like, who's that guy playing bass? So they asked Billy Morris. Billy Morris, you know who that guy is? And Billy's like, oh, yeah, that's Craig. He's friends with the Zooter guys, and I'll get a hold of him for you. So then they got a hold of me, and those guys used to come out. Actually, a guy named Bob Zouch. They would come out and pick me up in Chardon and drive me all the way back out to Parma. And then I would like spend the weekend with them, and we would like jam and do stuff like that and do our shows and stuff, and then they would take.
So you weren't actually from Parma. You just so that's how that all came about.
Yeah, the only way I got introduced to those guys was because through Mike and CJ, they knew Billy and the Sakula brothers, and that's kind of how I got in. Once that happened, then I was friends with Mike and CJ forever, and then I got introduced to Billy through them too, and that whole scene. And so once that happened,
it's like a chain reaction of events that just kind of took place.
Yep, and then the Unified thing came out of the Terror.
The Terror thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you got JJ John Sakula and Vic Novak was the drummer of the original drummer
and
for Unified.
Believe it or not, actually, I was not the original bass player in Unified Culture.
Oh.
Brian was.
Oh.
So it was Vic, Brian, Scott Zapata.
Scott Zapata's another name I'm familiar with, yeah.
And Jason. And Jason actually was, Jason Popson's one who sort of masterminded the Unified Culture name, the idea, the whole concept of what it was.
How would you describe your overall sound? I mean, if you had to like really pick some kind of category, which would you equate yourself with more? I think people unique. Yeah. Well, we know that. Fusion crash, I think people call me. And Well, hopefully you'll see some footage from this show on your show, and maybe people could come up with their own label for it. It's hard to ask us that. Don't like to answer that. We just kind of play, you know, and it just happens the way it does. Because, you know, it's like, obviously everybody says, oh, what do they sound like? And then you sit there and you scratch your head and you go, well, nothing really, you know.
And they'd put out like a 3-song thing, and it was those guys that had done it. And after that kind of got done, they couldn't really put together a band to do it. I don't know why. They just not everybody was really interested in doing it as much. And I was at a rehearsal out by Billy Morris's studio, and Jason showed up, and I never even heard of what he was doing. And he was like, hey, check this out. And at the time I was like getting into like more stuff besides metal. I was like listening to bass players that were, you know, like Larry Graham and stuff like that, all this funk stuff. And I was kind of like, I like metal, but I kind of want to do like some more stuff. So here's this kid, he's sitting on the hood of a car listening to this tape. And I'm like, dude, what is that? That's cool. He's like, oh, it's my music. And I'm like, I would love to do stuff like that. So we ended up just like hooking up, and from there on, we, you know, I stayed in the band with them, and we went through quite a few members along the way. Well,
yeah, and that's why I, you know, like through these shows, I bring up Terror a lot, because I don't think people have any idea like what came from all that.
Oh yeah.
You know, like so there was this, you know, that was like, and that was an original. That was back when there was just a few genres of metal. That was back when there was just a few things going
like
on.
Death metal.
Yeah, and it was a death metal band, and there wasn't a lot of death metal out yet. I mean, it was they were coming in it right when it was coming out.
Yep.
And then later on, you get Mushroom Head from all that stuff.
Right.
You get you,
right,
who's played with everybody basically. I mean, you have. I mean, you're an icon in this city. I mean,
my goodness.
Well, you really are. I mean, you are. You're an icon. I mean,
I've been fortunate to get the gigs that I've gotten, and you know, some of it's through luck, because you know, when you get into a situation, it's sometimes luck, or like
right place, right time type thing.
What do you do with it? That's the difference. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's like everybody gets opportunities in life. All of us do. And what do we do with them? And so it's a perception thing. So when you go, hey, here's this opportunity. Do I perceive this as something that's going to really put me out, and I'm going to work really hard to do it, and it's not going to be rewarding enough? Or do I look at the opportunity as, I don't know who I'll meet or what I'll do or what it is, and even if it seems like bullshit. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, yeah.
Even if it seems like it might be bullshit and it's extra stuff, but if you can step back and, you know, sort of pull the microscope away and then pull it out a little further and start to see that there's a big picture that's involved in all these different gigs that you do.
Yeah.
And so when it comes along that maybe the gigs seem kind of like not as much worth it, but you still took the opportunity, you have to put every effort into making sure that it's the best you can do. And I've always kept that attitude, and fortunately that worked. That's really what kept me working all these years, is that whatever it was, you go on tour, the accommodations sometimes aren't the greatest. Certain times you have to help certain people on tour that are just not used to touring, or if whatever it is, you be the helper on tour, be the person that doesn't need anything, and be the person that if when you're around you can do something to make the thing better. And if you just do that, you'll keep on getting higher. Of course you have to be good at playing. That's
right. Number one, you got to just play the instrument.
But at that level everyone is. You know what I mean? And the people that continue to get hired to do stuff, it's fully because of their attitude and what they'll bring on that side of it. Because we all have to be good at music. You can't go out there and do that otherwise. Right.
Nobody even looks at you if you're not that first.
Right. Exactly.
And then all the other stuff, the intangible stuff that you have to like know how to do. And there probably is a real etiquette to touring, I guess. You know, there probably is a lot more to it than just what meets the eye as far as
it's true.
So people call you up and be like, hey, I'm touring. I'd like to have you come play on with us on this tour.
Yeah, that's usually like an email. You know, you get like an email. Like
no one calls anybody anymore.
Right. But a funny story, speaking of that, how, you know, when you'll get just a random email out of nowhere. And it's like, you know, there's a saying in life, it's like, you know, you don't know what your next opportunity is, because 5 minutes from now the phone can ring, email can come through that you had no idea all this stuff was happening, and all of a sudden you get presented this thing. And that's how it always happens for me. I don't realize it's out there, so I just put my head down and work and do my thing, and then all of a sudden something will come in. But it's because of what I put out there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I've had a ton of really bad health problems. I don't know if you know about that.
No.
But I won't get into all of it. But at one point in time, I was in the hospital. One of the times I was in the hospital, I had just gotten done with getting a major abdominal surgery from here to like here's cut wide open. They had it's a long story. I've had a lot of them, 4 to be exact. And during this time, I had this surgery done. And I was in the hospital. And during that time, I had torn the sagittal band in my middle knuckle. So basically my hand was like this. I could not play bass. I was screwed. And I was like, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And so I had to have surgery to put that back together. So I was laying in the hospital with this giant incision and tubes in me and IVs and stuff. This was rebuilt and in a splint cast. It was like laying there, you know, and I'm on every drug known to man, basically just trying to survive. And my wife's like, hey, I want to check this email out. I want to check this email. Like, I don't want to care about email right now. I'm not feeling so good. So now you might want to look at this one. And it was Mick, who was Joe Satriani's manager. It's like, hey, Joe likes the work that you've done with Paul Gilbert and blah, blah, and he's doing this thing called G4. It's a camp, and he's going to have, like, you know, these other guitar player wizards on it, and you basically play bass for the whole thing. And I'm like, looking at my hand. And so, but it was 9 months from when I got the email. So it was like, I got this email, and I had 9 months from that time to when this was. And I was like, oh, yeah, yes, I'll be there. You know, and
Wow.
and I thought, well, in 5 months, if I literally go, I'm not going to play, I'm not going to be able to do it. That still gives them 4 months to hire somebody else. And anybody who's a great player could just walk right into that and be happy and
Yeah, right.
take the gig, you know. I'm probably cheaper than most other people, so I'm sure, you know.
You think that affects things a little bit or no?
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt because I'm still trying to work my way into things. And so, like, you know, I don't go, well, my name is this, so you have to pay me this many dollars.
I see.
You know what I mean? Because you're putting my name on a marquee at this point. And at, you know, at the point where he's asking me to do it, I'm still just, I'm a side guy. And I still am. And so it's like, I take the gig. And so I got it together, though. I was able to do it. And it was really amazing because it was like, Andy Timmons, Mike Keneally, and Paul Gilbert and Joe Satriani and Bruce Brulé from Racer X. And I played bass for all of them. And Mike Keneally's music was probably the most demanding stuff I've ever had to learn in my life, just
No
because
kidding.
crazy time signatures and stuff. Well, he's a Zappa guy,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like that comes through, and like his training came through, and so like learning his music was really difficult, but I did it. And so like it was one of those things where, you know, after I got through with that, I kind of reminded myself, like, you know, if you can do this, just never give up. Keep doing it, you know, because the health thing has been a really major issue that's like taken me out a lot, where I had to stop touring, had to stop doing stuff, get my health back together. And sometimes during that you go, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back on out there and do this again next time. But the more times I get through things, the more I remind myself, of course I will. I'll be back to do it again. And so like just last year, and over the last couple of years, I had another major situation happen where I'd have another major abdominal surgery. It almost killed me. I made it through that one. And then about 8 months after that, I had the situation with the hernia went bad, and I had all these. And so I had to have another surgery again. And that was in April. So I'm back now. I'm standing up again. I can sing and play, and everything's cool. So that's like sort of the reminder of to myself. To like when the shit hits the fan, don't quit, don't give up, don't feel sorry for yourself and cry about it. Just be ready, work, get yourself back, and when the opportunity comes back up, you got to be ready.
Wow.
And so that's where I am right now. Like I'm ready with my Looper show. I'm ready to go out and be an opener for somebody again. And that was really what was the path. Was you know, before everything happened with COVID. The stadium tour with Def Leppard was booked. And I was always their sub for the last few years. I was the guy that in case something happened with their bass player, I would get flown out and show up and be there.
For Def Leppard?
Yeah. And I never actually had to play the gig.
Well, you played with Phil Collen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
That's right.
I did G3, played with him. But I've done some other stuff with him, too. And he's a good friend. And while I was out with G3, that's when he sort of talked me into doing this solo looper idea.
Oh.
You know, he had lost his voice while we were on the tour, and he's like, asked me if I could pick up some of his vocals. Sure. And after the first night, he was like, oh my God, why are you not a lead singer? What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm just a bass player who sings good background vocals. And he's like, no, you're a lead singer, and you should be. And so, you know, throughout that tour, we drank a lot of Starbucks coffee in the morning. He and I would just get up and go find one and just sit there, and he would advise me, like, what are you going to do when you get off this tour? You've really got to pursue this idea with this looper and solo thing in your voice and blah, blah, blah. And so I came home from that tour, and I spent 2 years making that album. And when it was done, the stadium tour was booked, and all was good. And after that, there was this tour called the 2020 Vision Tour, and it was sort of the mop-up dates to after the stadium tour. Some of the smaller cities where you can't do a stadium tour, but you could do an arena. So the tour was Def Leppard, ZZ Top, and I was the opener with my looper.
Wow.
And yeah, it was all booked and all was good, and then COVID, you know,
Screwed
put
that
the
all
kibosh on that and ended that. And so
Dusty Hill was still alive.
Now Dusty's gone. It's all different, and so that's never going to happen the way that it was going to. And those are the punches you roll with in this thing. You know, it's like that would have made a major difference for me. I would have been out in front of all those people for a few months, being able to introduce what I'm doing as a solo artist and stuff, and that really is a good leg up to get started.
Heck yeah.
And so now, none of that's happening. I'm not subbing for Def Leppard this thing because I couldn't really get my health together in time to say, yes, guys, you can count on me. And in good faith, I could never do that. And so like that has to go on, and it's fine. And I have to take that on the chin and understand that that's the way my life is.
Tough one, but yeah.
But at the same time, what's it going to get out of the way of? Like what, you know, because Phil's like, don't stop doing what you're doing. Get out there and play every little show and everything you can, because the opportunity to be an opener is going to come along again. And when that day comes, you'll be so ready to go because you've been doing this thing nonstop, you know, and that's kind of where I am right now. It's like I'm taking that advice and playing as many shows as I can with my looper and trying to get that thing to be where I spend most of my time.
Let me talk about the looper thing for a second, because I don't think everybody probably knows exactly what you're talking about when you say looper. Everybody's not, because it's a newer thing that's come out. Tyrone Hornbuckle, who you know, Tyrone.
Oh yeah,
he does it all the time. Yep. That's his. You know, he's great at it too.
Sure is.
So basically, what it is you guys have a number of pedals. A lot of times it's pedals because you got your hands are occupied with other things, and you have banks of stuff that you can record with, or there's already pre-recorded stuff in some of these banks. I don't know if you do it that way.
So I don't really pre-record anything.
Right. So a lot of times it's you create a rhythm, you record it, then you hit a pedal, that rhythm will play on a loop, which is thus the looper. And then that rhythm's playing, and now you can play over that rhythm with another thing.
You're basically a recording studio.
You're just adding layers, on the fly, live, and so you have a thing out called Thought of Everything. That's the last thing that you put out.
The CD, but I put out 3 singles since then too. That are
right. The last work that you put out was Thought of Everything. So when you're going out on these loopers, you're playing music from the new singles and that CD. There's no cover songs, none of that stuff going on. You're playing your own music.
That's right.
Now, the thing about you that makes you very unique is that a lot of the loopers that are doing this are guitar players.
Right.
And understandably so. Guitar.
It lends itself a little bit more.
You're doing it with the bass.
Right.
So the first time I heard about this, I'm thinking, before I heard it, when I heard about it, I'm thinking this is going to be big bottom Spinal Tap bass song, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, you know?
Boom.
Yeah, and I'm like, and it's nothing like that, and it's cool. and what I don't even know what to say. It reminds me of, because
that's good.
Yeah, it's not. There's parts. The thing that's cool about it is that your voice is the melody. Your voice is the high end,
right?
And because of the looper thing, another thing that with the loopers is you guys are able to put harmonizers on your voices for certain like choruses and stuff like that, where it sounds like a group vocal.
No, I literally sing all of them. So I'll do one time, then the next time I do the harmony,
is that how you do
the
it?
next time I do the harmony, and so like the song Thought of Everything. When I build that, it takes me like 3 or 4 times around to get all the background vocals in it, because it goes thing, 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 thing. It's like all over the place. So I have to record those, and so like while you're watching me play that song, I record all that, and by the time I get back to the chorus, you've forgotten that I did all that, and then boom, I hit, and then
everything's
like, sounds like so
it's really cool.
Thank you.
No, it really is. I mean,
I can't say that I came up with the idea of doing it, because I didn't, but because Ed Sheeran is like the best looping artist ever. Like, he's a great songwriter. I don't listen to Ed Sheeran's music much, just because it's not really my style of music to listen to, but I really appreciate the way that guy does what he does with loopers and stuff. He's amazing. And so when this whole idea, Phil was like, that's what he told me. He's like, you've seen Ed Sheeran do this. He's like, but do a version of that where it's like groovy and bass heavy and sort of, and so that's really where the idea was like, these people do looping, and Ed Sheeran's kind of the best. So I watched him do it, and it's like, he's really smart with it.
Yeah, I can see what you mean by smart too, because you have so much available if you want to.
Right.
And it's just a matter of knowing when to do what.
Well, how do you switch parts? Because that's the thing. It's like there's only so many parts, and you have to. A song has to have more than like 2 parts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it needs more than 3. So what do? You've only got these many parts to work with, and so when you're writing, you have to keep that in mind, that you have to be clever with how you craft the songs that you're making, so that you can literally do it again.
Yeah. So in other words, you make the songs looper friendly.
You have to write them in the looper, and Ed Sheeran's really good at it, because he was like a busker. He'd be out on the street just making up songs with his looper, and that got him really good at sort of being quick at putting together a song. Because that's the other thing, like, I can build a song in my looper, but how long does it take before you're bored of me building the song? And unless you're a super fan of the song, you're not going to want to see me go around 9 times trying to build the song before I sing it.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the writing process too. Like, how quickly can I put this together and turn it into a song while someone's, because attention spans this long.
We know.
You know what I mean? And so you have to catch them real quick with something that you're doing, that they go, hey, I'll watch a little bit longer. And then something else has to get them. And so before they can lose interest, you have to start singing something. That's what I've noticed. Like, if you don't start singing something within about 30 seconds or something, you're going to probably
Someone
lose.
Turns over and they start talking to the next person, and then that's the end of it. You lost their attention.
Yep, and they're like, hey, too late. And then they're talking about something else.
Yeah.
And so that's part of, like, the whole process of, like, building and recording the songs and stuff. I had to be conscientious of some of that.
But you also got to be conscientious of the fact that you don't have guitars,
right,
and that you don't have these instruments that are kind of required to make music the way we're used to hearing it.
But
so you've had to, like, compensate.
It's true, but if you listen to pop music, like, turn on the radio and listen to pop, there's not a lot of instruments going on.
You're right. This is what I've noticed when I was listening to your songs, is that your songs do lend itself to a poppy kind of a thing,
right,
but poppy in a way. Not cheese pop, you know what I mean?
Right.
Not
well,
like,
I'm old, so I can't do that.
Right. Well, and you know, and one thing when I was listening to that I find, because I was listening to Unified Culture also, the newer stuff, which is not like with the old stuff.
Right.
It's definitely progressed into something that's really wild, extremely entertaining to listen to. No, that is very entertaining, man. And who's doing the vocals on that?
Jason Popson.
Cool.
Yeah, he's one of the old. He was in Mushroom Head. You know, he was one of the main Mushroom Head singers for the most time. He's J-Man. So if you know.
Oh, that's it.
That's
Jason
another Popson.
thing.
He's the one who, like I said, he came up with the concept Unified Culture. That was his name and everything. So that's he's the one who.
He's the OG from the original.
Yeah, Jason is the lead singer of Unified Culture.
Is it just you two are the two original guys?
We're the 2 main original guys.
And then so you've had some turnover throughout the years.
My brother Mike is one of the. He's been in the band the longest too. Now, as far as a drummer goes, we have Eric Matthews now. He plays with everybody. You probably know who he is. But the original drummer was Vic Novak.
Yeah.
And, you know, over the years, things happened, and we ended up not playing with him anymore. And unfortunately, he's passed away since.
Yeah, just recently, actually. And that's another thing, you know, like JJ also had passed away. And you're like, so that is sad. It is sad that we lost some of the great musicians for the years.
And friends, like, you know, these
great
guys
guys.
were friends since we were kids. You know, and, you know, I didn't stay as close with Vic over the years because things happen and who knows what. But in the end, I loved the guy. He was my friend, and I'm really sad that it ended the way that it did with him. So I just, my parents didn't listen to a lot of music, but the Rubber Soul was at my parents' house, and I used to listen to that. Yeah, and then my brother Mike came home from school when I was might be in 4th grade, and so he was like maybe in 6th or 7th grade, and Def Leppard was like this thing, like they were doing the air guitar concert, you know.
I remember them all. Mining Company and all them places used to do all that stuff.
Well, this was in school though. This is like in high school. He was in 7th or 8th grade or something like that, and they were doing this. They were doing the air guitar thing. So Def Leppard was this. They were doing Pyromania. You know, a Photograph. That was the song.
That was the album.
Yeah. And so he was like, comes home with the Pyromania. I was like, this is cool. And so we listened to it, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And he's like, I want to buy a guitar. I want to get a guitar. And so he started hounding my parents. He wants a guitar, and I was like, well, I want to play something too. That'd be cool. And I'm like, well, I want to play a guitar though. So I asked my mom. I'm like, what can I play? That's like that. She goes, oh, you could play a bass. Do you know what a bass is? I'm like, no. And so she's like, well, your grandmother played bass. I'm like, so my mom's mom played like the upright bass.
Oh, that's super cool.
That's, and so, but and I'm like, well, I don't want to, I'm too small for that. You know, at the time I was 8 or 9 years old. And so she turns on like the radio and finds like disco music. It's like bass is like, dun, 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 dun. She's like, that's the bass. I was like, oh, I want to do that. That's cool. And so
that's how it started.
I cut the little picture out of the Sears Wish Book catalog of bass. And I just like carried it around and looked at it for months.
No kidding.
Set it on my headstand. I was like, my nightstand. I was like, and finally I got it. Like my parents decided we're sick of hearing because I had 2 brothers, and my brother Mike wanted to play guitar, and my brother Steve wanted to play drums, and I was going to play bass, and we were going to have a band, you know. So they're so sick of hearing us complain, wanting the stuff. So finally, they just got it, you know. And so we got these instruments. It took years for us to actually get like wanting to actually really play it. And what changed me was Rock School. Do you remember that show from when we were kids? Herbie Hancock.
Nah, I don't.
All right, so Herbie Hancock had this show on PBS.
I'll tell you what. Hold on one second.
Sure.
We're going to take a break.
Okay.
We got to reset these cameras. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
No problem.
Craig Martini.
What's up, Cleveland? It's ZM Delgado here, author of the Rust Belt Rock Review at ZachO'Lantern.com, and I'm here to give you your weekly heavy metal update. So here it is. If you want to catch me, your first stop is going to be at the Grog Shop on Wednesday, August 10th, where I'll be checking out Goat Whore, Incantation, Bewitcher, and Caveman Cult. Going into the weekend, Friday, August 12th, head to the Vortex in Akron, where we're going to see Tyrant, Damage, For Absent Friends, and Dark Secret. If you're looking for some hardcore punk rock, you're going to want to go Saturday night to No Class. August 13th, Race Riot, Rabid Reason, and Nervous Aggression will be tearing it down. I want you to make it to each and every one of these shows. I want you to support this local scene. And of course, I want you to read the Rust Belt Rock Review and check out Level Up Cleveland every week. Thank you for your time. Keep rocking, Cleveland. Back to you, Brian.
All right, and we are back with Craig Martini. All right, Craig, so let's talk about this. We were talking about...
All right. Yeah, so Rock School. So we found this it was like on PBS, Public Broadcasting, and so Herbie Hancock was the host of the show, and he had these 3 musicians. One was a lady who played guitar, another guy played drums, and another guy played bass. And they would sort of talk through music. And they were excellent musicians. They were all British, and they would explain how these things were played. So if you're going to play reggae, the bass has to do this type of thing. And anyways, the episode that was funk came on. And, the first thing that I saw was Larry Graham. And they started asking him, about what the role of the bass is in music, as far as especially in like funk. And the words that he spoke for the next minute and a half in the playing, it changed my life forever and ever and ever and ever. I was like 11. And he's sitting there with this red bass, and they say, what did he goes, well, so with bass, the most important thing that you do is you hold things together, and if there's a vocal, you keep it simple, and you stay out of the way until there's maybe a bridge or something, and then you can stretch out, so to speak. But mostly you really want to keep it simple while you're doing a song that has vocals that's shining. That's the idea. And so they're like, well, do an example. And so he had his buddies playing guitar, and so he's like, just goes right down the middle of it, boom, but really simple bassing. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. So he's like, but if there's a space where you can stretch out, you can be more complicated. Now maybe the guitar takes the back seat and the bass gets more complicated. And then he was like, and he did all this crazy slapping stuff. And I had never seen that before as a kid. And I was like, this sounds like 9 people are playing the bass right now. Like, how is that happening? I'm like this kid going thump, thump, like trying to figure out how to play one note. And I watched that, and it totally blew my mind. And I was like, if you can do that, that's the same instrument. I can do that then. So I want to learn how to do that. And I just got super into all like George Clinton and Funkadelic and like, you know, Bootsy Collins and all these guys that were crazy, like funk musicians that I had never even been exposed to, you know, growing up in Chardon, Ohio.
Just from this show, basically set you on that path to
Rock
find out
school.
about all this
Yep.
stuff.
And once I saw that, it was over. It was like I wanted everything to do with bass. I wanted everything to learn every way I could, and I got into more different types of bass players that weren't necessarily only funk bass players, but like people like Geddy Lee, who like I took his, like I feel like I stole from so many people, but I never listened to their music much. That's the thing that I was trying to get at as far as like what music I would listen to something and like, oh, I really like the way that is, and then I would try to make something like for myself that was kind of like that, but it never sounded like what.
Right. It was more of just an influenced type thing.
Right.
And then, so from there, what's the first band you're in? Like, when did you first decide that? I mean, aside from you said you guys were going to form your own band, like
we did. We had our own band, and it was called, oh my gosh, it was called Outrage.
Oh,
it was me, both of my brothers, a kid named Frank Atina. Hi, Frank, if you're still paying attention to me. I'm still out here doing this. But he was a great singer, and he was a good friend of ours, and we used to practice over at his house, and his parents had this big party every year where, like, all their friends would come over, and, dude, we played, like, Black Sabbath and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
And, like, yeah, his parents were so cool and lenient to let us just, like, play for their friends, and we went out there on the deck and played, and there was, like, 150.
How old were you, think, about this time?
I was maybe 11.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow, that would be cool, though.
Yeah. And then we did a bunch of original songs. That was the thing. Like, one of the first things we did was write songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We just thought it would be cool to, like, have our own songs. And so that was our band. We had, like, 10 or 15 of our own original songs. Then we played, like, Black Sabbath and stuff like that, you know, for our first band ever.
So that's your first experience, really, with playing with other people,
Yeah.
and it was family. You have an opportunity to always kind of go meet new people, and you're meeting and people who are on bigger stages than you've been on and stuff. So therefore, the opportunity to learn has become.
You find them to be generally more humble than the people that have never made it.
Not to what you would expect, I believe. Right? You meet these people, and they're probably a little less the star type figure.
It's because they're satisfied with who they are, and they got the success they were hoping to get, you know, through their creativity.
Yeah.
They got out there, and it struck a nerve with a certain amount of people, and that will definitely make you feel valid. And so once you feel valid within yourself, it's so much easier to be nice to everybody. And that's what you find out with a lot of the really successful people that you'll run into, is they're really nice, and people are like, "Why, it's so nice too?" It's like, why? Most people expect people that are very successful to be very unnice and be, you know,
snobby,
right? But especially in music, most people are so grateful that they got through some way, that when you finally get there, you're like really nice and grateful because you don't want it to go away.
Yeah, right.
But when you're kicking and scratching on your way up, you'll notice that a lot of people are not that way. They're
not as nice,
sort of wanting to push your head underwater.
Well, it's competitive. It's a competitive nature there.
Right. And so that's really the difference between working with the guys that are on the level of they've been successful, as opposed to all of us that are still trying to be successful. And what's your gauge of level of success? Most people gauge it on whether or not they're financially independent from what it is that they've set out to do in life. That would be a benchmark of, I was successful to afford my life with the passion that I had, like that. And as a musician, that's exactly what happens when you become successful. Your passion that you set out to do afforded you success. And so that's really and so when you get that, if you're ungrateful and you're a jerk, everyone points it out. It's like, dude, you have everything. It's like, so no one wants to be that guy.
Yeah, right.
Unless they're just in this weird bubble somewhere.
There's kind of a blueprint now for it, though, right? Because, like, in the beginning, you had a lot of assholes in music and stuff. But I think, as like you were saying, as years have gone by, people have watched the story play out, and they don't want to be that person. Right. They're like, well, the blueprint's already there in place.
Right.
How do I not become that? And I think you've probably seen more and more people like that, because there's a lot of people who have died, and then their legacy is tarnished and stuff because of how they treated people through their life and stuff. If you're a musician and you're trying to become what you're trying to become, that's the last thing you want.
That's right.
That's the last thing you want. You want to leave a legend. That's one of the things you want to be when you're a musician.
Leave something good behind.
Leave a legend.
I think we all should think that, whether we're musicians or not.
Yeah, right.
If you really think about creation in
itself.
the entire concept of creation. So, I don't know, it's like this entire thing was created somehow by somebody. So the closest you can be to being up to greatness, which is what a god or something like that, is to create, because God creates everything, created everything, right? Depending on what you believe in.
Right.
But that's the idea. And so, like, in my brain, I think, well, the closest to being able to be something that is great like that is to create things. And not for reasons of wanting something in return, but just to create things, create music, just create it, because hopefully someone will be helped by what you're creating.
Yeah.
And whether you're I'm a musician, so that's what I create. I also create a whole bunch of other stuff too, crafts of things and stuff like that I make for people and different stuff like that. But each one, like what you're doing right now, you've started this, you guys have started this podcast idea, and it isn't to glorify yourself. Because if it was, you'd sit here and talk about all your ideas. you would be like, hey, I think this and I think that, and you would try to be like a personality of someone's opinions of things, and that's not what you're doing. You're bringing people in to give them a chance to talk about what they're doing, and through that, that's of course going to bring traffic your way and stuff like that. But that's not what the set out is, right? The set out is to try to like put a community together and get some light on the things that people are doing that have been ignored by a lot of other people. Definitely. And I think that's really where you're coming from with it. And not to put words in your mouth.
No, but I mean that's 100%. You just did. You put words in my mouth perfectly.
But I think
exactly what we do.
And so you're creating something. You guys are here creating something. And so that's, as far as humanity goes and the meat suit life, to me, that's the highest level of something you can do. I'll tell you what really was a cool thing. Paul Gilbert always did a VIP lesson, okay? And he did so you could come to the show, and if you were a guitar player, you paid a certain amount of extra money. I think it was like $300, which is really reasonable. And you get like an hour with Paul in your guitar, and you got like all this swag, like shirt and picks and like stuff that was worth the $300 without the lesson. You know what I mean? Because people really wanted this stuff. And he would only sell 5 or 6 per show because he wanted to make sure that everybody had an individual experience. And so the VIPs would show up, they'd all have their guitars, and he would sit down with them. He had 6 chairs around him, 6 amps, and he would sit with them, and he would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get, first he wants to find out what everyone's level is, and how he can help them. And so how do we do it? So he's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a rhythm going. Everybody get that going. And I'm going to start. We're going to do it in A. And then point to the next guy, and then he's going to play a little lead solo. And then the next guy, and he would do this around in a circle, maybe 3 or 4 times. And by the time he got done with 3 or 4 times, he would kind of get a good gauge on what he could help each guy with. And that's what he would do.
That's so cool.
And dude, I never missed a lesson. Every time I would get just in earshot and hide and lay down and listen, because I would just be like, oh my God. Then
you're saying this is why you were playing bass with him?
Mm-hmm.
So you were eavesdropping on the lessons.
Oh, yeah. Because it's like I'm learning something, because I would listen and I would hear the players play, and then I would hear what Paul would find to fix them. And it would always be like exciting to me. Like, I can't wait to hear what he says to this guy. I can't wait to. And dude, seriously, every single time, by the time that guy would play again, it was a different player. It was like, holy shit, I can listen to this guy play now. And the first time I heard him play, it was like oh no, he's struggling. And
this happened in an hour's time, basically.
10 minutes.
No?
Like, he could get him in 10 minutes, because he would be like, okay, what you should work on is this. And then he would spell it out and play it perfect, and make sure that they could play it in a very slow fashion and make sure that everything was right. And then it was their opportunity to do that and run with it. And so then they go back around in the circle again, and every time it would be so much better, because they would be playing notes that made sense. They would be playing something that was feeling oriented instead of just trying to play something really fast to impress Paul, because that's what Paul said. He goes, one of the things that's frustrating is that because of the playing that I do and the stuff that's on my records, that's what everyone wants to do. And so when they come to the lesson, they want to show me that they can play really fast.
Yeah, it's more like, let me impress you.
Yeah, and it's like, no, we're not doing that. And so once that like, you know, got through everybody's heads that the whole idea was to just improve and, you know, make yourself better. And it just goes along with everything else. It's like, make yourself better. And so if I'm out on tour and there's someone like Paul Gilbert giving lessons every day, what am I going to do? Should I go eat a sandwich or like go hide? No, I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn everything I can, because this is finite. This isn't going to happen every day of my life. I'm on this tour with this guy for 3 months, and I don't know when the next time I'm going to get out here is, but every single minute of this, I'm going to soak up every bit of learning I can. And
Very
so
cool.
that's where my lessons came in, was just like being around guys like that. And
When it comes to playing bass, it's usually in most bands historically, it's usually the bass drums are they're like a marriage in the band. Those two guys got to really kind of play together. They're the
Right.
rhythm section for the most part. But what you're doing is, aside from Unified Culture, you're a hired gun for a lot of these bands. You're coming in, or you're a backup or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're playing with a lot of drummers. You're coming in and playing. What do you notice? There's a time frame before you guys start to gel together, or do you feel like after a certain time of playing just music in general, a drummer and a bass player could just get together and it's just boom, it happens?
Okay, so it can always happen that way, and it always depends on the intent and the perception of said players. So most drummers that I know, they want to get along really good with the bass player, because it's a dance, okay? Because the bass, I hate to tell everyone this, is the most powerful instrument on stage always.
Nice. It does.
I can prove it to anyone who wants to play with me, because I will steer the band. I will make you play too fast. I'll make you play too slow. I'll make you change parts in the wrong spot because I'll lead you in it wrong.
Everyone thinks it's the drums. that
Very,
do that.
very, very powerful instrument, because
Yeah.
it pushes so much power and low end, and it like envelops the sound. So, and everybody sings off of the root notes, and everything's sort of based off of the root notes. So when the bass player makes a mistake, usually if he's playing with conviction, it sounds like the band screwed up, because you're riding on the bass when you're listening to music. And so when that bass does something, you expect that's the way it's supposed to go. And if you're the bass player and you're making those types of mistakes, you're ruining everything.
Wow.
And so a drummer and a bass player want to get along really good, because the drummer doesn't want the bass player rushing him. Because if I start pushing, then the drums start to feel uneasy, and he's got to try to work with me, and then it's a fight, and it's not good. And so generally, as a bass player, what I try to do is allow the drummer to set it where he likes to set it, kind of like Ron Popeil, set it and forget it, put it in its spot. And then what I like to do is sit on, I like try to just get in there and sit behind him, not late, but I want to play on
You're
the
more
back.
reactive.
I wanna
You're more reactive.
I want to play on the back side of the drums, because if I play on the back side of the drums, that leaves groove space still there. Like, so if a guitar player is generally, they're on top. They're a little bit on top generally. And so like, since the guitar player is pushing a little bit, if I can rein the band in with the bass and pull back and hold with the drums, we stay in time. We don't run away. If the drummer starts listening to the guitar player too much and he's ahead, we'll be 10 beats per minute faster by the end of the song. And no drummer wants that on his on his head. Like, hey, dude, you started the song at 98 and you ended it at 108.
Yeah, right.
Why? And it's like, well, I don't know. And
A lot of times you're saying the bass is what's driving that.
It is. It is, because if you push that drummer, you're putting pressure on him all the time, and the groove is, say it's a 16th or 8th note groove, do, 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 do. That's a cadence, right? And like, I can't get out of it.
Yeah, right.
And so if you start trying to pull or push, it starts to come apart.
Yeah, you're gonna hear the two
yeah, and it's bad. And so that's generally what my goal is if I'm playing with a drummer, is to just let him set it, and I'll just get in there.
I wanted to go over a couple of the just a couple of the gigs that you had through your life. I mean, you've been with a number of great people. We've talked about Paul Gilbert. We've talked about Phil Collen from Def Leppard. You've touched on some of the other ones too.
I did Colin Hay.
You did the
G4.
G4.
G3,
that's really
G4,
cool.
That's
you did
really
3 and 4.
Yeah,
that's really a cool gig there too. I'd love, because you're like the house band, and then you get all these aces coming out, man. And
it was so cool. It basically, Jeff Bowders and I, Paul Gilbert's drummer, we were the rhythm section for every amazing guitar player ever, like Warren D. Martini, and like all of them. We played with all these guys, and that was the thing, that the G4 thing that really was cool was that it introduced me to musicians that I never would have had a chance to play with, like Phil Collen from Def Leppard. When do you get to play with someone like that? You don't.
Yeah, right.
And so when that came up, it's like, wow, this is really cool. And then you end up, what do you do with the opportunity? You know what I mean? Like how we started off with, like I met Phil, and like what did I do? I just did everything I could to be good, you know. And he recognized it enough to say, hey, I'm doing something later. Would you be interested in doing it? You know, and that went that way. So luckily, but you know, before all that stuff, you know, I hung around a couple guys with the last name Zuter, and they taught me a lot. Like Mike and CJ made me sing. In order to be in their band.
What do you mean by made you?
They made me sing. They really did. In order to be in their band, because I was around them since I was like 11, and I would go down to their rehearsals and I would hang out with them. And when their bass player would be done for the day and their rehearsal was over, I'd hop up and we would jam until like late night and stuff like that. And those guys, they always appreciated me for the little kid that hung around and like wanted to be in their band. That I was too young to be in the band. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't, but I was always around. And later on, when they moved out to Vegas, and they wanted to have me come and just do the band with them, but Mike was like, you have to sing. You can't just come and be in our original band because we have 3- and 4-part harmonies on everything, and you have to sing one of those parts. And so that was it. It's like, well, if you want to be in the band, you have to sing. And so those guys put the time into teaching me like how to harmonize with people. And like how to sing. Like, of course, you either have pitch or you don't. Yeah. And they recognized that I'd had pitch, and it was just a matter of practice and honing it into using something that's useful. Yeah. You know, and that was how I learned, was from those guys singing background vocals with them and learning how to harmonize with other people and make it sound like a cohesive thing, you know, while playing an instrument. And playing bass and singing is tricky. It really is. It can... It's not for the faint of heart.
No, I believe it would be, because bass is not normally, like we said before, it's not normally the lead instrument where you're doing both.
You don't get to wishy-washy around. Like on a guitar, you can strum it and sing a few notes and then strum it when it makes sense again. But when you're playing bass, going dung 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 dung, and the vocal line's going it's like not on. It's like different, and so you have to. Get good
literally
at that.
Learn how to separate.
Right, and so like when I first started trying to do that, I thought, well, it's impossible. I can't sing and play. I can sing or I can play, and that's it. And Mike was like, no, you can do both. I'm like, no, I can't. He's like, yes, you can. You have to practice it. Why would you just be able to do it? You just think you could just do it? Like, I can't do that. I can't sing and play bass like that. It's practice. And like you watch Geddy Lee and all these other guys, they do it. They're lead singers of bands. Why can't you sing anything? You can't sing a background vocal note. That's ridiculous. It's like, okay, you're right, I can. And so then you just start practicing it. And then you realize the more that you can do it, the more you can do with it. Then it becomes exciting. Then it becomes like, well, I want to sing. Then it's like any band you're in, you want to contribute to the vocals and stuff. And since those guys sort of pushed me in that direction, if they wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have put my time into doing that. And all the stuff that happened later on in my life that was gigs that came up, most of them were because I could sing too.
Yeah, right.
Because, dude, go on YouTube. Look at the bass players. They're ridiculous. There's like kids that are 11 that I'm like, I don't even know what that kid's playing right there. It's amazing. Like, it's, wow.
Right.
So how am I going to separate?
How do I compete with that?
What do I do that's going to make someone want me over anyone else? And it's like, well, if you can sing and you have a voice that sounds like something someone wants to listen to, that always works. Because you don't even have to play an instrument, be a singer, and somebody likes what you're doing.
Yeah, it's true. And
so that really made a big difference in my career. So thanks, Mike and CJ, for forcing me to sing.
You're still in touch with those guys?
I haven't spoken with them in a while, but anytime I get a chance to, I'm happy to.
Well, maybe this will bring it. Maybe this will. They'll see this and they'll say, "We gotta call Craig."
Yeah, good guys. Like I said, I really learned a lot from them, and musically, and I'll take it with me forever, and I'll never not give the credit where credit's due, because those guys really did take a little kid under their wing and teach him a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So, what would you say? Like some of the like. So let's say you're getting toward the end of your life, right? And you're sitting down with somebody, and someone's like, "So I heard you're a musician, you know?" And you're like, "Yeah." What's the first story you tell them? Like, what's the one thing? Is there like, I always wondered, because like what's such a crazy long career like you've had and so many facets to it. It's not like you were in one band and you just have stories from this one band. You got so many different personalities and things. But it still seems like just through me living my life, there's always one thing that stands out here. There's always one thing, one or two, you know, and then everything else is. But there's always that.
There's a lot of stories like that.
I'm sure there are, but
with, and I don't. You know, it's hard to say which ones would be the most important, or one I would tell to a
just the ones that you just can't. The one that you remember, like
it really depends on who I was talking to. 'Cause like if I was talking to somebody who was like into my bass or like what I played or something like that, I would tell them a story about some of the things that happened, like with Paul. Here's a good story about my bass. One of the basses I have this Yamaha BBG4, and I've had it forever, and I played it and on everything. And then I was going out on a tour with Paul, and Paul was like, "Hey, you're going to need a bass that's tuned differently because we're doing 2 different tunings on this tour, and so we're going to have to switch." And say, "Okay." So I went on eBay, and I was looking around to see if I could find one that was similar to that one, and I found the exact one. And it was like in Michigan. So I bought it, and I was hoping it would get to my house before I left for tour, and it didn't. I had to go out to Paul's to go for rehearsal. So I was living in Vegas at the time. And so I went to Paul's, and we started doing rehearsals and stuff, and I just had my one bass, and so I was just tuning so we could rehearse. And my wife was like, "Hey, that bass is going to be here like later tonight." I'm like, "Okay, the second it hits the porch, ship it right back out, ship it to Paul's house." So she said, "Okay." And so she did that and shipped out to Paul's house, and I got I have like an EMG endorsement, so they gave me pickups for it and stuff like that. And so I had the pickups at Paul's house, the bass was at Paul's house, and we came home from our rehearsal, and I was like, "Cool, I'm gonna put the pickups in the bass and like get it ready, and then we'll have it for tomorrow." And so we get to his house, and I'm gonna put the pickups in the bass, and I'm like, "Hey, Paul, you got a drill?" And he's like, ironically, both drills that I own are at the rehearsal space because we were doing like the Makita drill like thing, and so the drills were there. And so I'm like, "Oh no, I'm gonna put this bass pickups in here." And so on his kitchen table, I
not a butter knife,
pulled a screwdriver. I used a screwdriver and I just twisted it back and forth and made a hole.
Made the holes that way.
Yeah, and then because the bass is weird, and I was like, the cavity's too small to fit everything in, and so I've devised a way on my other one to get everything in there. So I knew how I could do it, but I had to do it sort of on the spot and on Paul's kitchen table with a screwdriver instead of drills and things like that. So that's a funny.
But did it work?
Yeah, it did, and I still play. That's the main bass I play now.
Do you still tell people like, "Yeah, I did this with a screwdriver"?
Sometimes, if they are interested, I will. But the bass looks kind of weird because the volume knobs are configured funny because of that. Because I just moved it over, and I used the volume knob hole for the jack.
Did you ever get kind of like freaked out by the fact, like, when you're playing with a guy like Phil Collen, for instance, right? This is a guy who's, you know, insanely successful, insanely rich, for that matter.
Sure.
Does that ever like seeing these people's lifestyles, especially in the beginning, like the first couple times you probably played with some of these guys? Was that kind of like a shock type thing in the first time
I think I expected more than what it is, for real. Like I expected, like when I see
more
like,
extravagance.
Yeah, I just figured, oh, these rock stars are just, you know. But honestly, what I've seen is a lot of humble stuff, and like, you know, no one flaunting opulence. Like I've got this and that and this and that. It's like people live pretty much within their means. I don't know everyone, so I can't say how all rock stars are or whatever, but most of the guys that I've worked with aren't like that. They don't live in an extravagant way, but what they are is generous. So like you go to Starbucks, you're not paying. They're always going to take it. You go get something to eat, it's just sort of an unspoken thing that you're not going to pay, and you have to really try to pay. Let me get it this time. You know, once in a while they'll say, yeah, you can get it. But for the most part, you're there working for them. They've hired you to be there. You wouldn't be there otherwise, and so they're going to take care of you. That's cool. And that's what I've noticed about it, is just like a generosity that I try to live my own life the same way. I don't have as much, but I still try to be generous with my time and my effort and anything else that I can be, because I think, again, we're fixing ourselves in these meat suits, and being generous with your time and stuff is how we can do it.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing about the situation that we're in now, because one thing that we got to see at our age group, I think, was the whole cycle of rock and roll, right? All these young bands, They started off young. It was a young man's music.
Right.
It was but we've watched them, all our favorite bands now go through the aging process,
Sure, yeah.
and now they're all at that. They're either gone or the Aerosmiths and all this stuff who are still around.
Doing it a little bit.
Ozzy.
Yeah.
They're talking about him touring again.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, like when we watch how it all plays out and everything, and you see how and what seems to have disappeared is the debauchery of this music. I don't want to say it's disappeared, but it is nothing like it used to be. And when I talk to the guys that have some form of success and stuff like that, you try to get the story from them. You're like, what crazy stuff happened? That was 30 years ago. That was 20 years ago. Yeah. Most guys, like, they're telling us now, they're like, well, we sit in a room and we talk and we drink coffee, or we might have a couple beers with each other, and we trade stories, and this is what we do.
It's it. It's all it ever really is. It's like, I can't wait to get backstage, and it's like, it's not partying backstage.
It may
have been back then, but I mean, I kind of remember some of that from when I was pretty young. But
I heard the stories.
I wasn't around it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I remember the Akron Agora and backroom situations like that, but it wasn't like there was no crazy party going on. People were drinking and smoking and doing things like that, but whatever. So in the back rooms, like, that I've been in and all the bands that I've toured with and stuff, none of that kind of crazy shit's happening. Everyone's trying to look out for their health. Yeah. Everyone's trying to look out for their well-being.
Right, before they were doing lines of cocaine and all this crazy stuff, now everyone's like, well, their salad, and they got their boiled chicken and whatever it takes, and a lot of them hire nutritionists and all that stuff. And,
always.
Yeah, right.
You have catering with proper food, because you cannot do this on a level where you're out there singing night after night and then just not. You can go back and find footage from those days of those bands, and I guarantee you that everyone that watches their old footage is embarrassed of it when they go, man, we were wasted.
Yeah. And you can hear, like, the vocals, and you can hear it in a lot of these bands. Oh boy.
That's the main issue. Is like when you don't get proper rest and you don't get, like, proper nutrition and hydration, your voice is the first thing that goes.
Yeah.
And so you're going out there trying to deliver these songs that everyone's listening to on the radio, and you don't need to sound terrible.
Yeah.
Then you either drink more and forget about it, or you stop and go, I want to do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of these guys are right now.
Rest has become a lot more important, where no one rested before.
Well, don't you want to listen back and be proud of what you did instead of going, oh, why did I do that?
Yeah. And then also another thing that's happened through the years is, obviously, with the internet and everything, you can't make money selling music.
Right.
So that's another benefit of those loopers. Right. I mean, let's be
myself.
Yeah, let's just be honest. I mean, like, you're still charging venues what a band would charge for the most part. Probably not exactly, but I mean,
I'm not yet. But maybe someday.
But still.
Well, Ed Sheeran sells out Wembley 2 nights in a row. He gets to keep every dollar.
That's what I mean. And,
you know what I mean?
And I think that's a lot of why you're seeing these loopers come up, because, a guy like Tyrone Hornbuckle, who's a phenomenal musician and can sing
anything,
10 million songs. I don't know how he knows every song I think ever made.
He's a jukebox.
He really is.
Yep.
That looper thing is so great for him, because he can create a life as a musician because of it,
without any need.
And you don't have to pay. You're not making 10 or 20% with the band. You're making it all. I mean, it's really a cool thing.
It makes it possible. Is really what it is. It's the difference between not being able to do it and doing it,
and making a living being a musician. Have you had to take other jobs through, like, in
my life?
Yeah, I mean, like, have you?
But I haven't had a day job since 1999.
That's pretty good, though.
Yeah, it was the last day job I took was working at a coin hopper company in Vegas. Like, they made coin slot machine hoppers where the coins went in, and, like, I was playing in the Zooters at the time, and we had like this disco band out there, and we were doing really well, and then we, like, lost the disco job, and, like, we were all just, like, struggling trying to, like, play, and we were trying to do this thing where we kept the band as a unit, because if any of us went and did other stuff, then when we needed to do something as a unit, it'd be like, hey, the dude can't come because he's over here, or this and that. So we always tried to do everything together, you know what I mean? And that sort of made it a little bit more tricky.
Yeah. Well, so do you have a stable of places that you play at normally, or are you constantly looking for a new venue? You know, there's a lot of musicians right now. They have their 4 or 5 places, and they just kind of.
I don't really have any in particular. I mean, I'll go and play anywhere. The issue that I have is like I don't really know a lot of venue owners. I know some, because most of the gigs that I've done in town are just like I get hired to play with somebody. You know what I mean? And so I show up at the gig, and I never meet the owner or the person who gives the check or anything like that. I'm just there.
Yeah.
Unless I do something by myself, then I'll usually meet the owner. But I haven't, like, this is kind of new. I'm, like, just getting back out on my feet here again because I haven't. So my looper concerts, I've only done a few, you know. And so, like, I'm looking to get going on that and do as much, like, if anybody wants me to open for them or do anything, I'll just come and show up and do it, you know, and just to get it is just to get something generated, you know.
Get the word going, get people excited about it.
I'm just, I mean, I look at it as like I'm nobody. I'm just trying to start something, really, and so hopefully it will.
You're not nobody, but I will say this: the one thing about this thought of everything that you're put out in your singles, it's very catchy stuff. I mean,
thank you.
On top of the fact that it's not dummy music. I don't know how else to put it. It's just not. It's very intricate. It's got all kinds of stuff going on, but it's very catchy. It's it's good. You got an unbelievable singing voice.
Thank you so much for that.
So that being said, I would think it's about to take off, man.
All I can do is hope and keep trying my best, and maybe it will. I really hope so. I just need an opportunity to get in front of the people, because that's really the thing. I know, you know, with my character of who I am and what I can do with I know I can stand in front of people and entertain them.
Oh, yes.
I know I can do that. And so if I just keep getting the opportunities to do that, that's all I can really ask for. And hopefully it will make the people that are standing there watching me go away with something that they enjoyed and they're happy with. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't see. I'm just enamored watching the whole looper thing. I don't even care if you're good at it. I just watching somebody with what they have to do.
Yeah.
And to keep us all here, I mean, I just think that's amazing. And the fact that you're doing it at the level that you can do it at, like, and there's a few of you guys out there that can do this.
No, sure.
But I don't think it's for everybody.
No, it's tricky.
Yeah, and like you're just talking about a bit ago about how the Zooters are saying you got to be able to sing, and you're like, well, I can't split my brain like that. How am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? And that's just
right. Two
things going on: singing and bass. Now, the drums. Do you actually create the drum parts live?
Some of the songs I'll do that. I'll like make drum sounds with my bass, but but the looper has like stock drum beats in it.
That's what I was going to say. So you do have some pre-recorded drum beats and stuff.
Some of that stuff is there. In fact, what I did and that's how I did it. Like I wrote the record, I used that looper.
No kidding.
So that when I recorded the record, I used at least the drum sound and track that I used in the looper, so that when I go to play the song live, it still sounds like it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I could have went on the computer and programmed all these crazy drums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I really wanted this to translate live. I thought that was the most important thing, because when I see a manufactured band, basically one that like it was a studio band that put it all together, and then they go out and try to recreate it, I don't like it. But like when I see Leonard Skinner, who like stood in a rehearsal space for freaking 16 hours a day every single day, and the record that you hear is because the engineer was like, thank God I captured it.
Yeah, right.
Right? And so that is the difference between what I was trying to do. Like, I want to be able to go out there and play something that needs captured, and I'm capturing it every night. I'm recording it for you. So that was the whole idea, is like, I want it to be, when I play this live, that it sounds just like what you're listening to at home. Because I don't want you to go, oh, this is really cool, this is a bass guy. And then you go out and listen to it and go like, well,
yeah, right.
Almost.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want that to happen. So that was partially why the sounds from the stock sounds from in the looper ended up on some of the songs in the record, because I really wanted that stuff to translate and be the same and play it live.
So here's another thing that I often wonder. So you're in the funk band with Unified Culture. Mm-hmm. You're doing your solo thing. You've been in all these other bands and stuff. When you're going to write material, first of all, in Unified Culture, do you help with a lot of the writing of those songs?
I pretty much write all the music. Other than like, I'll write it and then I'll say, hey, Mike, play something on guitar that you think is better than the guitar part I write. I don't even care, you know, because I just put something in for a guitar part when I write a song. Drums, same thing. I program a simple drum part. Some of it's specific. I'll be like, you've got to play this part, but otherwise, you know,
tempo is basically what it's for.
That and like rhythmic things, like, you know, if I'm like on bass, I want you to play that on drums too.
Oh, sync it up kind of like
so.
It's
You hear those things; those are signature things. I want those in the songs. But other than that, I kind of let everybody just do their thing. But the structures, the riffs, and like all the I write that.
So
mostly.
when you're writing these things, so I assume when you're writing for your solo thing, that's just more from the heart, straight. Anything can come to you at that point. You're not pigeonholed into anything because this is your solo thing.
It's
you
true.
Can
I
do
don't
whatever you want.
Other than like metal, I'm not probably going to do by myself.
Yeah.
But
well, right. Good luck.
Yeah, it's just
but,
not really
right. That lends itself to a band.
Right.
But I'm saying, but when you're doing like Unified Culture, that's a whole different thing because that's not necessarily any idea that comes to you. It's an idea that comes to you that fits into what you guys do.
That's very true. And so the Unified Culture stuff, writing that stuff in a rehearsal space is easier for me than writing it at home because it's like play drums, I'm playing this, now play this on drums, stick with that, and then sort of goes together easier that way. But the last record we did with the newer songs, I wrote those in my computer at home, and everybody just kind of learned their parts. And
is that where you record everything at your house?
Yeah, everything is in my basement. I record everything at home.
Cool, man. So what do you guys got? What do you got? No, you guys. See, there I go.
What do I got?
Well, you are like I can actually say it to you.
Me and
what
myself.
Are you guys? Because you must have. Do you ever think about it that way though? Like you have different personalities that plays different things in this because that solo thing, you got all kinds of things going on.
It's an alter ego. Sure.
Is it kind of like that?
It kind of has to be a chameleon-like, I guess, where you like each situation. You know, if I'm playing with Men at Work, Collen Hay or something like that, I'm not going to be playing the type of stuff I'd play in Unified Culture. There's just no way. I'll get fired in 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Because I'm there to play a role, so you have to fit in to that. But when it comes to Unified Culture, it's easy for me because I've been doing it since I was a kid, and I just do that. And but if I have to write something, I write stuff for all kinds of people too. So like I just get into.
Do you ever sell songs? Do you ever write songs and sell them?
I do, and I get into the mindset of what the person I think wants. You know, they say I need a song of this type or what. Phil and I do writing together, where we just we he lives in California, but we do the emailing thing back and forth, and we do the tracks together and stuff. And most of it gets assembled by me at my house in my studio and stuff. But yeah, so we write together. And
ever hear your stuff show up on a Def Leppard record?
No, we'd have to talk about that first.
Just kidding.
But yeah, no. But yeah, it's mostly for like you try to put you write songs and put them into this bank, basically. And so, if other artists are,
so you don't stop. I mean, would you say that you don't stop writing songs? I mean,
no, never. It's always something. Like in my phone, right now I have songs that I've started that I gotta get to
work.
Yeah, and I've probably got like 100. You know what I mean? And so the hard part is like, which one?
100? Yeah,
easily, because I just always write something. Oh, that's cool, and I record it for 30 seconds, and I got to finish that.
So you have like 100 parts. Of songs.
Like I have 100 songs that I could finish, but probably only 20 of them would be ones anyone would want to listen to besides me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's really cool. Like it's impossible to play, but no one would ever want to hear it. So like that's always going in my head. There's always an idea. There's always a riff, or I hear something. Like I could be walking along and hear like the cadence of something. They go, that's kind of cool. Like I got to remember that, and then
like a motor,
sing it into my phone or something.
Like a motor running, and it has some kind of
a train. Like you guys have the trains around. Like I would totally listen to that and find it. Like that's cool. So,
all right, I think that's it for us. This has been awesome, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming down, man.
Listening to all my stupid old stories.
I love it. I've loved every one of them. This has been a lot of fun, man.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming down, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, look out for Craig, man. He's going to be playing out and about. All right, and that's it for us. Level Up Cleveland, and we are out of here.
Hope to see you.
That'll be fine.